you do need education, and you need the laws to help you guide you in education. I've got a great subject and a great guest on the air with me. We're talking about education law. So, Ray, what does an attorney, how can an attorney help parents? How can an attorney help kids? How can an attorney reach into these people's lives?
Welcome to Lewis on the Law.
You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I have yet another super exciting show on the law for you. This show is all about empowerment, empowering you as the individual. We're here each week to give you legal information, not to replace the advice of an attorney. If you got a serious legal issue, you need to contract with an attorney. I have attorney R. Matthias Bettendorf. I know him as Ray, but he goes by R. Matthias here of the Bettendorf Forum, and we're going to talk about education law today. And I think you actually specialize in disabilities, special needs children, and issues like that. So when you're talking about education law, Ray, what exactly are you talking about?
So when we talk about education law, we're talking about all kinds of issues that students and parents face, matriculating through the school system in K through 12 public education. But further than that, even after you leave K through 12 public education, if you continue on to higher education, those students face legal issues as well, and we're here to protect their legal rights. As was said in a famous court case, students don't shed their rights when they enter the school doorhouse.
Okay, now wait a minute. What do you mean by that? Students don't shed their? Is this like freedom of speech inside the classroom or stuff like that? Because I know when I was in school, which is a long time ago, I had no freedom of speech in there. I could have gotten thrown out for anything.
Certainly, that's exactly what we're talking about. There are local district guidelines that schools have to abide by, as well as state and federal guidelines that schools have to abide by. So you can't just go willy-nilly in terms of the administrators subjecting kids to discipline and things like that.
Okay, let's take this back to you, because I'm really interested in your area of special needs children and children with disabilities. So what kind of things are you offering here for those type of children?
So for those type of children, what we offer their parents is support. If you're a child with a disability, or if you're a parent with a child with a disability, that child is probably operating under what we call an IEP, an individualized education plan. And so one of the things that we do at the Bettendorf Firm is make sure that schools are honoring and providing the supports that these students deserve by law.
Okay, so what kind of things does this IEP actually entail? What's involved with that?
All right, so there's quite a lot, right? And so a good IEP should have the following. It should give an indication of the child's academic abilities at that point. It should always be current. It should be updated.
What if they're like me and they don't have any academic abilities?
Then we need to get an IEP started as soon as possible.
Oh, no.
But that IEP should also provide guidance to the teachers and other folks that interact with that student, and that guidance should help them deliver services to the child. So if you have a child who has an IEP, they have went through a battery of tests. There's been documentation provided to the school system that says, hey, they need these supports to make sure that they are not discriminated against in the schoolhouse and have a full opportunity to enjoy the school experience as if every other kid in the schoolhouse would.
Now, what kind of obstacles do these kids have in school?
So if you have a disability, right, you may have cognitive delays, social development delays. And so these can lead to learning issues, right? They can also feed into discipline issues, and just, if they're not identified and addressed through IEP, they can really do a number to a child's ability to gain a fair, appropriate public education, which they are, supposed to get by law.
Okay. So what kind of disabilities are addressed through IEPs? Just cognitive disabilities?
So IEPs will focus on cognitive disabilities, but it also, as I said, will focus on issues involving social development. And so you have a range of things that can occur there. You will have people at the schoolhouse that will evaluate that student to see what's going on. You'll have counselors, psychologists, and it's really just kind of diagnosing the issue and then prescribing things to help that child out.
Okay.
But we'll see, in terms of what kind of disabilities, that you'll see in the schoolhouse, autism, ADHD, like we said, delayed cognitive and social development, orthopedic impairments, specific learning disabilities. There's a range of disabilities that are addressed by IEPs.
You know, this takes me back to like elementary school, way back when in the dark ages. And there was this kid, Billy Fisher. I shouldn't even say his name because he might be grown somewhere in a corporate exec or something like that. But he used to run around in circles and then go pee in the corner. Is this the kind of stuff you're talking about here? Emotional disabilities?
So if I was working in a schoolhouse and I was to observe that is definitely a child that I would recommend to someone or a team that we would call in the schoolhouse the student support team. That may be what we would call a child find, right? So this child that you're referring to perhaps didn't come to the school with an IEP. And so no one at that point noticed anything. But as soon as you start seeing the circles around the room, urinating in corners, that's a child find. And you've got to address that. And that's when you get those that collective of professionals to get together with their expertise and try to figure out what's going on, because we want that student to grow and develop as other students are. But we know that, school is just a microcosm of society. And so these children come in with all kinds of issues. And it's the schoolhouse's responsibility to meet them where they are.
Okay, so can these IEPs actually kind of address, I guess they're designed to address the problems, but is there much success in these IEPs addressing kids with disabilities and special needs? Does it actually address their issues in school?
Well, and that right there, James, is where the legal issue can arise. If you have a well-written IEP that has accurately identified the academic abilities of the child, has taken into consideration the disability, and has applied or chosen to apply research-based services that are appropriate to the disability, then you can see great success if it's applied by the teachers and other folks that come into contact with the child. However, that is where the issue is, right? If you have a complaint or if the child is not developing, perhaps the IEP is not well written. Perhaps the IEP is not being followed by folks in the building. And so even if it is well written, no one's following it. No one's providing these services to the child, and their development is stagnant at that point. And again, which just leads into a whole host of other issues, oftentimes discipline, strained relationships between parents and leaders at the schoolhouse.
Yeah, now I know that a lot of times with some of these disabilities, maybe not the learning disabilities, but some of the emotional disabilities, it really some of it may stem from the kid's home life. I mean, does the law actually extend beyond the actual school and try and address some of the issues in the kid's home life? Because I think a lot of the emotional instabilities and emotional radical behaviors you see in kids these days is probably, part of it's, genetics, and part of it might be their environment.
Absolutely. The whole process, whether we're dealing with IEPs, 504 plans, or at-risk students who may be on a tiered plan, the idea is to work as a partnership with the school as well as the parents at home. And so everything that we're doing at home, that the schools decide to do under an IEP or a 504 plan, is shared with the parents, who can then try to instill those same services, those same interventions, those same accommodations at home. But you're correct. A lot of these problems stem from the home environment. But nonetheless, schools get these children once they walk in the door, and they have an obligation to help that child grow and develop.
So schools help these children, and I guess they do this by providing services. Is that accurate?
Yes. So under an IEP, the support would be called a service. And that's where, the differences come between IEPs, 504s, RTIs. So an IEP, you're going to get a service. That service is usually going to cost the school district some money, right? It's going to be a financial burden to it. But the child has shown a need for this, and so the school has to provide it, whether that's an additional teacher to work one-on-one with the student, or whether it's some specialized equipment to help the student deal with this disability.
Okay, so we're almost out of time on this segment. Ray, can you give them some contact information for you?
Sure. If you would like to just learn a little bit more about what our firm does, you can start by looking at thestudentRightsAttorney.com. That's on the web. Take a look at that, and you'll find out a whole lot more information, as well as how to contact us with your issue.
Okay. Do you actually have some contact information, phone number, website?
Sure. You can contact us at the Bettendorf Firm, 470-387-9222. And you can email me personally at tbf, like the Bettendorf Firm, at thestudentrightsattorney.com.
Okay, you're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I am your host this week and every week for an exciting adventure in the law. That's right. That's right. The law can be exciting. I have a lot more stuff for you. If you need to get in touch with me, you can go ahead and email me at james@jameslewislegal.com. If you have a topic for this show, you can hit me on my website on the contact page, the very last page of my website. Just drop me a line, and if you have a topic that you'd like for me to get into, drop me a line. If I like your topic, I may find an attorney who actually knows something about your topic and bring them on air and talk about it. I got a lot more coming for you. My number is 404-610-0075. Give me a call anytime. We're going to get back into education law, children with disabilities, and some of the impacts attorneys can have in their lives. Joey, our producer, has got the studio rocking out in here. Awesome tunes there. We do need education, and we need educational lawyers, even more important. My name is James Lewis, and you're listening to Lewis on the Law. We are here each week to give you legal information. This information is not designed to replace the information or the advice of an attorney. If you have a serious legal issue, you need to contract with an attorney. If you can't find an attorney, you can always come to my website, drop me a line. If I can't help you with your legal issue, I can help you find the right attorney. All my shows are archived on my website. You can go back through them. Eventually, it'll be a huge catalog of almost every single legal issue you can possibly imagine. You can go there. You can take your first step. This show is designed as a first step in your legal process. You can go through it. You can go through my archives. You can call me. You can contact me. Any way you need help, go ahead and get the help. Don't rely on this show for all your help, though it is a great show. And I've got a great subject and a great guest on the air with me, R. Matthias Bettendorf, attorney R. Matthias here. And he is of the Bettendorf firm. And Ray, I know you as Ray. It's hard for me to get out the R. Matthias. I know, but just talking to you, it's Ray. We're talking about education law, and specifically in this section, we're talking about children with disabilities and special needs kids. So, Ray, what does an attorney? How can an attorney help parents? How can an attorney help kids? How can an attorney reach into these people's lives?
Well, James, if it gets to the point where you have a communication breakdown, things have gone awry, right? The school is not being responsive, and you as the parent, you're getting frustrated. So the one thing a lawyer can do immediately, he can come in and be a liaison between the parties, right? This is the parent's child. It can be extremely emotional. And then on the other hand, you have school leaders who can sometimes take it personally when they're accused of not doing what they should be doing. So a lawyer can come in, take a little bit of that emotion out of the picture, and get to solving the problem. Another thing lawyers can do, they can help parents understand the relevant law. I mean, teachers, administrators, they went to school for this stuff. So they know what all the acronyms mean. They know what law is being applied here. They know what time deadlines are going to be impacted here by the parent's complaint or problem. Parents don't often know that. So if you get with a lawyer who has an education background or just an educational lawyer, they can help you understand those things. What does IEP mean? What does LRE mean? What does SST mean? What does FAPE mean?
The alphabet gang, right?
Right. And these are things that frustrate parents immediately because they come to these meetings and people are talking as if we all know this stuff. And parents are in the dark. And immediately it's just a very tense moment. So a lawyer can come in and kind of be that bridge between those parties. Lawyers can also review documents, right? This is one thing that lawyers are really good at. We can take a piece of a document and get into it and rip it apart. And that's an important thing to do with an IEP. You want to make sure that that IEP is well written. If it's not worth the paper it's on. You want to make sure that the services that the school has decided or agreed to provide are appropriate. If they're not appropriate, they won't help the child grow and develop. So these are ways, of course, that a lawyer can help. And we all know that a lawyer can definitely write a complaint, and go to litigation if it's an egregious violation and you want to file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. So there's a variety of things lawyers can do, but personally, I think the best thing to do is just have a lawyer act on your behalf and keep that communication with the school on a good level there.
Okay, that's a lot. I mean that automatically brought up visions of parents upset with their teachers at PTA meetings, blowing a fuse and deciding, you know what, I'm going to get an attorney. I'm going to sue the school. Now, that's not really what we're talking about here, is it?
No, that's usually not what we're going for here. The whole purpose is FAPE, free, appropriate public education. And that's what we want for the child, right? And so we come in and we want to work together with the school and bring the parents in and let them have meaningful participation in the process. And so that's the first goal. Now, of course, if things go bad and you have a school that's not being responsive or being just violating all of the statutes that are in place, then of course you have to take it to the next level.
Okay, so earlier you threw out something called a 504 plan. Exactly what were you talking about when you were talking about a 504?
Okay, great question. So 504s are very similar to your IEPs. However, a 504 is a written plan, right? A written educational plan that is intended for students with physical or mental impairments that impact their daily life, okay? So it has to impact their daily life. So as you can imagine, that's a wide range. So if a child has a physical or mental impairment that makes it hard for him to concentrate, makes him hard to, do simple things like brush his teeth, right? Maybe he's got a broken arm or something like that. These things will invoke a 504. A 504 would be appropriate for a student like that. So it's different from an IEP because instead of services, right, we're not under a 504, you're going to get accommodations. So if you've got that broken arm, right, you're in a cast for 8 weeks, you need some accommodations so you can be the best student you can be. Perhaps you're allowed to have an electronic pencil sharpener. If you're a student with a visual impairment, you're going to need an accommodation. Perhaps you're going to have preferential seating where you're sitting closer to the board or the screen so that you can see those things. So the main difference, because you can have a student that has a disability, has an IEP, and or a 504, but the main difference is the type of support the student will receive. Under the IEP, you're getting services. These are things that cost the school district money. Under a 504 plan, you're just getting accommodations, things that people who interact with the student will do to make or mitigate the impact of that mental or physical impairment.
Okay, so what other kind of things are you talking with the 504 here? Now, this is, I really had never actually thought of the distinction between that. The IEP are services that the school offers, and the 504 are accommodations. Is this like a wheelchair ramp? Is this what we're talking about here?
Yes, it could be. And so that's a good example. So a lot of times, I find it funny because I know this arena, right? And you'll see an advertisement for IEP services or whatever, and you'll see the stock photograph of a kid in a wheelchair. And I look at that and I say, with this knowledge that I have, I say, hey, that's not an IEP issue.
They're crossing lines there, right?
I mean, and it could be, right? Because you have to dig a little deeper. There could be some other things going on. But that visual right there says to me, hey, this is a 504 issue. We need to make some accommodations so that this student can get in and out of class, out of the building, in the lunchroom, and things like that.
Okay, yeah, because a kid's educational background really impacts their life and how they go forward from there. So how do you really think that these services and these construction or these benefits actually impact students moving forward?
Well, I've seen it. I've seen it work, and I've seen it go bad. And so, again, it's about making sure that the plan, whether it's a 504 plan or an IEP plan, is worth the paper it's printed on, and making sure.
Now, can it be both? I mean, it sounds like they're not exclusive.
They're not. And you can absolutely have both, and you can maybe graduate from one or, exit one and move right into the other. So, yeah, you can have both, or you can have one or the other.
Okay, so any other type of accommodations in the classroom that we're talking about? I mean, do some of these accommodations help students in their testing?
Sure. So the accommodations, if it applies, right? And so not in every case will you get the same accommodations in a testing environment that you do in just a regular classroom environment. But depending on what you got going on and what is written in that 504 plan, then perhaps that student can get extra time on a test. Perhaps that student can get extra breaks to get water or things like that. So there's a whole range of what can go on. It's really specific to the impairment or the disability that the child has.
Okay, that really, I mean, to me, that doesn't sound like that really would impact very much. I mean, forgive me for saying this, but just because a student gets a couple of extra water breaks, does that really help a kid in the classroom?
Well, I mean, it depends what the issue is. I right here off the top of my head, I can't think of an issue that could be helped by frequent water breaks. But therein lies another problem, James. So you said, right, how can that be really helpful? And if that's what you see after reviewing a 504 plan, then you need to update that, right? You need to have some meaningful things in there, meaningful goals, meaningful accommodations that are appropriate and that will help. And that's exactly the problem that you see. You see these goals in your IEP plan that are not real academic goals, right? Or they're not really appropriate to the disability that's going on. You find a lot of boilerplate language. You see a lot of drop-down menus where the people who are developing these plans are just clicking things that maybe don't apply. And this is one reason why it's good to have an attorney look over that document. And that's something you could do with, not much to invest, right? It can be a relatively cheap process to have an attorney review the document and then provide a critique on that document. You should go back to the school and have them get a better goal or a better accommodation. This is not helping the student, okay?
Okay, so we've got a lot of really good information here, and I like this because this is really good information for a lot of parents these days. We've got a lot of disabilities, a lot of ADHD, ADD. A lot of that stuff is on the rise right now. So a lot of times parents don't know where to go or how to interface with their school for these issues. So we're reaching the end of this segment. Ray, won't you give them some more contact information for you once again?
Sure. You can call my office at 470-387-9222. You can reach out and learn more about what I do at thestudentRightsAttorney.com, and you can email me directly at tbf@thestudentRightsAttorney.com.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. We are talking education law today, and the first segment of this show is focused on children with disabilities. We got a lot more stuff coming up for you right after these messages. If you need to get in touch with me, go ahead and drop me a line at jameslewislegal.com. Hit my contact page and drop me a line. And if you have an issue that you'd like to hear on air, let me know about it. Well, at least the music is good. Joey's making fun of my football team over here, the Cowboys. I don't know if any of you guys are Cowboys fans, but this last game this last week was historically bad. My second favorite team is the Falcons, and that game was not much better. So I am rolling on a low football tide right here. And what's make matters worse, Joey's got his Eagles football shirt on, It just brings me down. But I'm not here to bring you down. We're here to empower you. We're talking education law today. I have Ray Bettendorf on with me, attorney Ray Bettendorf of the Bettendorf firm. Ray, tell them a little bit of your background here, because you're an education attorney, but how did you get into this specific field?
Sure. All right. So, before becoming an attorney, I was an educator. I taught middle school for 10 years, English language arts, middle school students. Wow. Miss them.
Really? Were there like a lot of spitballs and paper fights?
There was never a dull day dealing with middle school students, I'll tell you that. But I definitely enjoyed that experience. And after 10 years of teaching, I wanted to kind of keep moving up and just be able to impact education on a wider level. So for the last 4 years prior to going to law school, I served as what we call an instructional support specialist. And as an instructional support specialist, I dealt with the issues we're talking about today. I served as a 504 coordinator, making sure those students with physical and mental impairments received the accommodations they needed. I also served as an SST chair, and that's the student support team chair. And that dealt with those children who were covered by the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and getting them the services that they needed And then that dovetailed right into dealing with bullying issues, the RTI process, which really touched on helping those at-risk kids. And these are kids who may not have a disability, they may not have a physical or mental impairment, but they were struggling in school. And so that's what I was doing the 14 years before law school. And it just became an area that I stayed interested in and wanted to, protect those rights as a lawyer when I became a lawyer.
And now you take that background and you go ahead and you work in that and you work for the betterment of students. So we're talking about, and I think a lot of this discussion, the way I'm seeing this unfold, is really primary education. So what type of kids are really at risk here in school?
So when we talk about at-risk students, we're talking about those students who are performing below grade level. We're also talking about those students who are having discipline issues within the school. There's so much that is impacting their ability to gain that education, right? They're being suspended, they're being, whether it's out-of-school suspension, in-school suspension, so they're missing instruction time. So they're at risk. And then we're also talking about students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They're at risk because students from those kind of backgrounds often miss a lot of school. They don't often have the support that we talked about at home, and so they're also at-risk students. And just like those students with disabilities or mental and physical impairments, schools have supports that they have to offer to these children to ensure their growth and development as well.
Well, what kind of supports can school offer these kids?
So schools in Georgia follow what we call a tiered process. And so there's a tiered process. It's also referred to as a response to intervention. So once you notice that a teacher notices that a student is well below grade level, an intervention should be applied. So think of an intervention as giving that student extra help. And so the teacher is charged with applying this intervention, not to a whole group, right? Because that wouldn't make sense. Everybody is not struggling, just a few folks. So at tier 1, that's everybody. Tier 2, you want to get a small group of students who are struggling maybe in similar areas, and you want to give them extra work. Now, remember, Georgia's on a three-tiered system. So if after giving them extra assistance once or twice a week in a small group setting, if they're still not responding, then the teacher should, of course, record this data, maybe select a different intervention, and we're going to ratchet it up, right? Instead of working with them once or twice a week, you're going to work with them 3 to 5 times a week. Instead of working with 2 to 3 students that are having these problems, you're going to work one-on-one with that child. Because, again, the goal is to ramp this kid up. He's below grade level, or he's at risk. He's missing school. He's missing instruction. And so we want to get these students up to grade level so that they can perform on standardized tests and be promoted to the next grade and have success in school.
Okay, so is it really the teacher's responsibility to identify these students, to initiate these type of programs?
Well, it's not theirs alone, right? And so schools have an entire team devoted to this type of response to intervention. And so along with the teachers, you'll have counselors working. I told you I worked as an instructional support specialist. Those type of professionals will be working, and a whole host of other people. But the teachers will bear, a lion's share of the work in terms of applying the intervention, because that's what they do, right? They're teachers. They have that pedagogy, and they have to work with those students. It's their responsibility. They are the teacher of record, and so they are charged with the bulk of the work. However, there's a team to support that process, to monitor that growth, or to see what's going on.
Okay, now say you're a parent of a kid that's struggling, and your school is really not taking notice. I know when I was going to school that sometimes the kids that were struggling, they just kind of sat in the back and the teacher just ignored them. It's not like they took an active role or the school became interested. They're just like, whatever, let those people do whatever they want, and they engage with the students that really engage. What can a parent do to engage the system, to kind of help along in this process?
So the first thing a parent could do is be involved. Be involved with the school. I understand that, parents have competing interests. Sometimes, they're too busy to get to the school. But with technology nowadays, you can attend a meeting via phone, right? You can attend a conference call. Be involved in the process. Do not bury your head in the sand. Technology is also helping allow parents to keep track of things, right? Their grades are often now online. You can log in and see that. And so all these plans that we're talking about as well. School districts are now putting these on their electronic platforms. So if your child is supposed to receive an intervention 2 or 3 times a week, you should be able to log in somewhere and see if that's occurring. And you can see how it's impacting your child. And if you see it not occurring, if you see it not having a positive impact, then call the school. Don't be afraid to call the school. And while we always want to be respectful of the chain of command, sometimes you got to go to the top. And so if you have folks that are dropping the ball, not responding to your calls after you have some concerns and you want to be a responsible parent and address it, call the principal. Maybe they're not aware of the issue. Okay? And if you have to go further than that, then you have to do it. This is your child.
Okay, now when you say go further than that, are you talking about hiring an educational attorney to step in here?
Absolutely, if you need to, but you can call the school board. You can call the school superintendent. You can do all of these things. I would suggest to a parent, exhaust all those options first, as long as you can. But now if it's gotten to a point to where there's too much friction, right, folks are being unprofessional or something like that, then you may need to have a lawyer step in, because a lawyer kind of changes the tenor, right, the mood of the building. When a lawyer comes in, things all of a sudden start happening a little quicker. The T's get dotted. I mean, the T's get crossed and the I's get dotted a little bit sooner. And it's unfortunate, that you have to threaten with a lawyer or bring a lawyer with you. But again, this is your child's future at stake. So do what you need to do to hold schools, principals, and teachers accountable.
Okay, now we were talking a lot about new platforms. I'm really curious about this because you're really seeing, and I mean, this is maybe off topic a little bit, but you're really seeing the advent. I think I saw a commercial for free primary education online. I mean, you're seeing it more and more online schools. How is that going to affect the future of education, and how is that going to affect you as an education attorney?
So in terms of affecting the future of education, I think it's just going to give more options to parents, right? And so as long as these schools that we are seeing pop up are accredited and it can allow your child to pursue higher education when that time comes, then that's fine, right? And I'm okay with choice because if you have a situation that is not good, then you have the ability to move on and go elsewhere. In terms of how it will impact me as a lawyer, I'm not really sure. I would imagine that the same issues would arise even with these online schools. They would still be held to the same statutes and laws. They would have their own district policies or, school policies that they would have to adhere to. And so these would still be issues that a lawyer could help with if you find yourself in a situation where things aren't going well for you.
Okay. So what type of disciplinary issues actually come into the fold that would force a family to actually want to go and hire an attorney? Because it seems like that's a dramatic step.
Right. And it is. It absolutely is. So what kind of discipline issues could call for having an attorney? Well, for one, we've talked about students with disabilities. So if you've got a student that has a disability and he's now being subject to some sort of discipline, you may want to call an attorney. Because there are limits, there are protections for those students who have an IEP. There are only a certain amount of days that they can miss. If the behavior that has led to the discipline infraction is a manifestation of their disability, then that determines how the school is able to deal with them. So you either need to be well-versed on the law yourself, or if you're not, that might be the situation where you call an attorney because it could have some serious ramifications on the student moving forward.
Okay, you're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. When we get back, we're going to go ahead and wrap up a little bit about primary education and then hit some topics on secondary education. Lewis on the Law comes to you once a week. My name is James Lewis. I am your host. We're here to bring you legal information. Each and every single week, we are your first step in the legal process. If you have a serious legal issue, go ahead and contract with an attorney. If you need to find an attorney, go ahead and contact me. I may be able to help you with an issue. If I can't help you with an issue, I can go ahead and help you find the right attorney to deal with your legal issue. You can always give me a call at 404-610-0075 or hit me at jameslewislegal.com. We've got more stuff coming back for you. I've got attorney Ray Matthias Bettendorf, R. Matthias Bettendorf, Ray Matthias Bettendorf with me, and we're talking education law today. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I have another super exciting show for you today. We're talking education law, and besides the bumper music, you do need education, and you need the laws to help you guide you in education. Ray, will you give them a little contact information for you?
Sure. You can reach me at my office at 470-387-9222. You can check me out online at thestudentrightsattorney.com. And you can email me at tbf@thestudentrightsattorney.com.
I am on the air with attorney Ray Matthias Bettendorf of the Bettendorf firm, and we are talking education law. Really, throughout this show, we've been talking primary education, and we're going to get into secondary education a little bit. But why don't we wrap up a little bit about what we're talking about here as a student rights lawyer, what you can do for them, the IEP, the 504. Just give us a little wrap up real quickly.
All right, great. So, what can I do for you, or what can any lawyer who specializes in education law do for you if you have an IEP, 504, or a student in RTI, the response to intervention? So what we can do for you is very basic at first. We can do a document review. We can take a look at your IEP plan, your 504 plan, or your RTI plan, and make sure it is doing what it's intended to do. Make sure it's not full of boilerplate language and just check boxes, right? Because that's not going to help the student. So we can do that for you. We can also, if you have a more tense situation, perhaps there's already a disagreement going on and you want somebody to advocate on your behalf. These plans also come along with several meetings. You meet annually, or you can initiate a meeting on your own, or the school can initiate a meeting. So as a lawyer, I can attend that meeting for you or with you and advocate on your behalf. And again, like I said, that kind of brings a little bit more to the room and hopefully gets the ball moving a little faster. So those are some things we can do. And of course, if it is just a ridiculous situation where you have a school just failing to meet their responsibilities, we can draft and file claims with the Office of Civil Rights.
Okay, so how does this translate into higher education? What does an attorney do here in the realm of higher education?
Right. So while the bulk of an education law firm may focus their work on K-12 education, as students matriculate to higher education, they encounter issues as well. And some of the common issues that we see with college students are grade appeals, right? So you'll have a situation where you feel like you were given a grade you didn't deserve. There's all sorts of procedures that colleges have to follow in these kind of situations, and an attorney can be beneficial for you, advocating for you in that aspect as well. Academic dismissals, right? You go to college, perhaps you're having too much of a good time, put on probation.
Nobody here would know anything about that.
Yes, so put on probation and maybe ultimately dismissed. We can help you appeal those decisions. Title IX violations are common in the college arena. And
okay, wait a minute. When you're saying Title IX violations, don't bring any of that fancy language here. Right. We're on air. Dumb it down for me because I'm a little slow.
Sure, gotcha. And Title IX is in the news right now, mm-hmm. right? And so Title IX deals with sexual harassment and things like that, and excluding
that is huge right now,
and excluding students based on their gender and things like that. So it is huge right now in the news. I believe defense attorneys, or if you were defending someone with a Title IX allegation against them, that you're liking the news right now, right? You get to question the person making those allegations when that may not have been the case before. And then all kinds of other campus misconduct charges. Many of us have been to college, and we've seen the things that go on there, and you can catch, or students can catch, all kind of minor charges that impact their education and their ability to attend classes. So you might need an education lawyer for that as well.
Okay, yeah, because that made me think of a lot of things. I mean, there are grades that I wanted to appeal, but the people who hire an education lawyer to appeal grades went to a much better school than I did, because I couldn't have even thought of hiring an attorney to do that. Yeah. Now, will you actually have an impact on appeals, dismissals? Can you actually impact that with an attorney?
Well, you can, right? If the school has done something unethical, right, or if the teacher has given a grade that was unwarranted, yeah, an attorney can come and have those things reversed in your favor. Or if the student was not granted due process before being dismissed from school, then yeah, an attorney can absolutely come in and change things for the student. Not always, right? We can't guarantee any kind of results, But it all depends. If they have made some mistakes, if the school has not followed their own protocol, if they are violating any federal statute, then absolutely, they may have to change their decisions.
Okay. Now in education, I actually at Georgia State they had a legal department. How do lawyers actually how can lawyers help the school, or do lawyers actually? Are there attorneys for the schools, for the teachers? Is there an avenue there for attorneys?
Absolutely. So, that's a pretty big field in terms of advocating for teachers and staff members of, a K through 12 school or a higher education institution. So you can have all kinds of issues ranging from contract issues, right? Most teacher positions are contract based. And so if you have an issue, you're released before your contract, or perhaps you are trying to get out of your contract, a lawyer can help with that. Most teachers have to be licensed, right? And you could have something going on that affects your license, or perhaps you're being denied a license, or something's being put in your file. And so an attorney can help educators and other school personnel with those issues as well.
Okay, let's get back into Title IX violations, because that's kind of big right now. So what are some of the things that you're seeing right now that are really impacting Title IX?
So Title IX, what I see most often are allegations by students against teachers. And some of this actually kind of stems from the grades, right? The grade appeals, and then you get all kinds of other stuff that comes out. And so that's what I'm seeing most prevalent. But of course, it ranges. It ranges from not being able to, or not having options or sufficient options for one gender to play sports or something like that. And so you see a range of issues with Title IX.
Okay, so we're seeing a lot of stuff in the news goes to allegations of sexual misconduct with coaches, with professors, and stuff like that. Is that really something that you think is prevalent at schools?
Well, I don't know if it's prevalent, but it does occur. It does occur. The facts show that, the cases are out there that show that, and that's unfortunate, right? And one example of that, I would imagine, is too much, right? When we send our children off to college, we don't expect them to be subjected to that kind of stuff. And so, how prevalent it is, I'm not really sure, but it does occur.
Okay. So are we seeing the rise of civil claims then? I mean, it's in the news a lot. I mean, maybe it's just because it's really, really sensational, but you actually see it. Is there a rise in civil claims? I mean, I hear all kinds of legal issues happening on the campus. I mean, anywhere from harassment at fraternities, sororities, to misconduct, to players taking to cash or being academically unsuitable for class.
Right. And so, in terms of Title IX, the atmosphere is tough right now, right? It's the whole Me Too movement. And so you have to be really careful about what you say and do, or you can find yourself involved in a Title IX allegation. And, it doesn't take much for that to occur and to throw your whole education into a tailspin, right? You could be not allowed to come to school. You could miss a semester, or you could be thrown out. And so these are things that we have to be careful of, especially in the environment that exists today. And it's unfortunate that exists, but,
Okay. Yeah. So that's a lot of stuff right there. I think we could probably go on Title IX. So when you're talking about proceedings in education, you're talking about licensing proceedings, contract disputes, and civil claims. Is there a lot of that goes on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So teachers, they sign contracts, and oftentimes they are not allowed really to be a free agent. So the contracts may come out in, let's say, in Georgia, at least in one county, the contract for the next year comes out in March. And you're given a very limited time to sign that contract.
I didn't realize teachers got contracts. They sign contracts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you sign a contract, right, and like I said, they come out in March. And many teachers, you're in the midst of preparing for standardized testing at that point. And so you're not really out there looking for other opportunities, even if you were interested. But what happens is you get this contract that comes out in March, you get this very limited time to respond. And then on the back end, if you want to get out of the contract, you could find yourself in an issue, right? Because if you want to pull out of the contract early, then they could ding your license, right? Put an unethical violation on your license for not honoring your contract. And so these are real issues for teachers and principals as well.
Okay, that sounds like I had no idea that teachers had contracts. I'm like, wow, that's really fancy, actually. I mean, you think of sports stars having contracts. Yeah. You know, I have a limited 6-month contract to review commercial leases, but you know, that's not anything that I'm going to dispute at this point. Okay, Ray, I've really enjoyed talking to you. This is an area of law that I don't know a lot about, and I think that a lot of people actually don't know a lot about this. I don't think that a lot of people actually would think that you could have an attorney represent you in a dispute in your educational system.
Absolutely, and you know, when you think about the impact that education has on you, it's really important. And so if you find yourself at odds with the school system, I suggest, you know, speaking to an attorney, maybe not hiring one, but speaking to one, learning more about your rights, and then proceeding from there.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I've had a great time here. I've been on air with attorney Ray Bettendorf of the Bettendorf firm. We've been talking education law. I have a great show coming up for you guys next week. I have attorney Narissa Jewett-Jackson coming back on air, and we're going to talk about domestic violence and issues that affect women specifically. So it's going to be a heavy topic. I am here each week. Love you guys. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. See you next week.